Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I have another sit down talking video for you guys, and today's video is about tips that I have for corporate girlies out there. And this is coming from someone like me who's been in the corporate world for a few years right now, and it's just tips that I want to share and what works for me personally. And I'm not saying that you definitely have to follow these rules or they are 100% the best way to do things. It's just what I personally stand for in terms of my morals, my character, my way of doing things. If on the other hand, your way of climbing the corporate ladder is more of being super cutthroat, playing politics, being like a snake, then it's just different from my path. This video is just for girls who want to know how I am or what I follow or practice as a corporate girly, and is how I try to do well in my career without losing my character. So take what resonates, leave what doesn't. Let's start. Now let's start with something very basic but it's very important, and that is food. Now for me, right, one of the random tips that I have is that try not to eat fish soup for lunch, especially if it's the first meal of the day, because fish soup, right, is generally very low in calories, so it won't really give you enough energy. And even if it does, right, you will tend to feel very hungry very soon, and then you end up just snacking more later on. And I personally try not to snack that much, and therefore I try to avoid eating fish soup unless I'm really craving for the taste of fish soup. And also fish soup in the CBD, right? I mean, if you work in a CBD like me in Singapore, you will know that fish soup is generally very expensive. Like, I personally like to buy the fish soup around Raffles Place, like One Raffles Place area, and that is usually about $10. It's just mostly carbs, which is the bee hoon or the rice, and very little vegetables for fiber, and of course very little protein with just 5 little slices of fish. The next tip I have is to eat your breakfast. So I know that a lot of people actually don't eat breakfast, and I've actually tried that before, and I realized that there actually is a difference when you eat breakfast versus when you don't. As long as your breakfast is not the kind of fried bee hoon that will cause you to have a food coma after that, I think it's actually quite okay to eat breakfast because it does fuel you and you're not working on an empty stomach, and then you can have energy to work up till lunchtime. I mean, that's what works for me lah. So typically for breakfast nowadays, right, I do like to eat like wraps, Caesar wraps, or just wraps with vegetables and protein like egg. My next point is to try and avoid salads, like full-on salad bowls where it's just mostly raw vegetables like raw lettuce, baby spinach, kale, and all the Brussels sprouts, all that kind of gas producing kind of food, because I do think that these kinds of raw vegetables are a little harder for like us Asians to digest, so it does cause a lot of bloating, gassiness, and then it just makes me feel very uncomfortable for like quite a few hours. So I do try and avoid these kinds of like full-on salad bowls. And the last tip I have about food or drinks is that I allow myself one fun drink a day. That's actually what I really look forward to every single day. It's like, oh, what am I going to drink today? So it could be a matcha latte, or it could be an iced decaf latte, or it could be an iced kombucha, or even an acai smoothie. So these kinds of things are what keeps me excited to actually go to work, and it gives me the fuel to actually get on with the rest of my work day. Alright, next let's talk about outfits. I think different companies have different policies when it comes to outfits, like, different cultures, different levels of tolerance, and especially also I think it will depend on your work function, whether you are in a client-facing role or you're just in a back-end role. And also I guess it's like where your office is located, whether you are located in the CBD or are you located more in like the industrial area. I think all these are different factors that can contribute to how you can or cannot dress in a sense. And our office is located in the heart of the CBD in Singapore. So that's where, everyone is suited up with very formal looking kinds of clothes. But I mean, I do see people in the CBD also just wearing jeans. So I really do think it's up to your company culture. For me, if I do wear spaghetti straps, right, I will cover it up with a cardigan, especially when I meet clients or if I'm in the office. Therefore, when I shop for clothes, I do try to buy clothes that are not spaghetti straps if I'm buying them for work lah. It's because Singapore's weather is so hot. I'm not really that huge of a fan of wearing cardigans nowadays. So I do try and wear clothes that are not spaghetti straps so that I don't have to go and cover up with a cardigan and then I'll feel so hot. When it comes to shoes, if I'm in the office the whole day, then sometimes I will wear heels to work. I do avoid wearing open toe shoes. I mean, I do know that strappy heels are super in trend right now. I see so many girls in the CBD wearing that kind of heels, right? For me, I don't wear that. I always wear covered shoes, be it flats, heels, they're always covered. I think that just helps me look a lot more put together as well as more professional. That's where I try and also have my personal style, but I think I'm very intentional about how I present myself. Moving on, the next tip I have is for you to take care of your health. One of the ways is obviously to have enough sleep. On most days, I get at least 7 to 8.5 hours of sleep, and I think that that just helps me feel so much more refreshed. It makes me feel so much better the next day, and I can think way more clearly. There will be no mood swings, nothing like that. And it just feels amazing to have enough sleep. The next thing is that I try and eat a balanced diet. I feel that a lot of the food outside, the food that is being sold, right, a lot of them are like 90% carbs. You know, if you buy chicken rice, it's 90% carbs. If you buy prawn noodles, it's 90% carbs. And therefore, I always try and pile up on fiber like vegetables for dinner, because I just feel very, very, very guilty when I don't eat enough protein or fiber throughout the day. So I do try and make it up during dinner. And then also I do try to stay active. So I will sometimes play golf. I sometimes go for night walks with my husband or myself. For the next section is about mental health and having a life. I think that this is very important to me, where I make sure that I do have a life outside of work. Like I have hobbies and I do other activities. For example, on the weekends, I do spend time with my family, with my husband. I go and try out new cafes, explore places in Singapore, attend ceramics classes, pottery classes. I also do work on like my hobbies. For example, one of my hobbies is actually just making YouTube videos, because it's like a digital diary and it's just so fun to talk, to edit, to film. Hobbies can help you maintain a baseline level of happiness, and it's just a wholesome way of spending your time. And when you have things that you enjoy, be it, you know, exercising, cooking, content creation, art, anything else, you're less likely to feel empty or miserable, and then you won't end up wanting to take out your unhappiness on other people lah. So I think keeping yourself grounded and happy is just quite important. Of course, I do acknowledge that this looks different for everyone. I mean, if you have kids or heavy commitments, then of course your time is naturally more limited, but that's also completely valid. But for those who do have the capacity, then having a life outside of work prevents you from just being too free, too bored, too unhappy. I think that it's very important to keep yourself and your life fulfilled and meaningful. The next tip that I have is for you to try and engage in self-improvement. That could be, you know, attending courses that your company sends you for, or even on your own time, right? You could also try and self-improve. You can even just read the news. I think even reading the news and staying updated with the trends, the news, what's happening all over the world. I think even spending time keeping up with trends or what people are up to is a way of making sure that I am socially aware. For example, I personally like to stay updated with the news. I do read the news. I do watch videos on YouTube talking about the news quite a lot. And I also do enjoy watching other people's vlogs on YouTube, how they spend a day in their life, you know, how they explore countries with different perspectives and mindset. And I also really am very interested personally in knowing how things work in other countries. For example, I do watch some Korean YouTubers like Kian Choi, where she lives in Korea, and it's just very interesting to find out how Korea works. Sometimes I do watch vloggers from NYC like Hannah Park. I can see how their culture is like, what they do with their life, so that, you know, if I do visit these countries one day, I will know what to look out for and all that. So I think it's very fun also. It just gives me a lot of ideas and inspiration. And also that's why I share my own videos and shorts. It's also to exchange ideas, show you what I'm experiencing in my life, what kind of cafes I'm visiting, whether is it worth it or not in my opinion, topics that I just want to talk about and just share my opinion with you. So I do make those kinds of videos also, because, you know, the internet is a place where we can just exchange information and ideas. That's where I can hopefully inspire others also in a positive way. Next, I do have some practical corporate life hacks to just make your life a little easier. Specifically, I guess, for people who work in a CBD like me, try not to leave work at 6 p.m. sharp. So sometimes when I do need to leave work at 6 p.m. sharp because let's say I have an appointment to rush to, like a beauty appointment or a facial, I realize that the MRT, right, is just super crowded. In the MRT, it can be so crowded such that it's like skin to skin with others. People can be coughing in my face. And so it's just very crowded. And even the buses also, like the bus stops, especially to take a bus out of the CBD, right? I did try and take an express bus out of the CBD before, but take note that it's not like normal buses where it comes very frequently. It only runs at certain timings, only a few buses of those in a day. And then it's usually like at peak hours, like going to work timing and then end work timing. So it's very limited, and quite a few times when I took that kind of express bus out of the CBD, right, there wasn't a space for me to sit, so I had to stand in a very crowded bus, try to balance myself for like about an hour as the bus drove out of the CBD to my house area throughout that whole traffic jam during the peak period around the CBD and out of the CBD. Now, this last segment is about how I deal with things or my boundaries. Firstly, I do keep clear boundaries with the opposite gender, so I don't go out or hang out with people of the opposite gender one-on-one. And if I do hang out with them, it's always as a big group where we can just enjoy group activities together in a very wholesome way. I keep my boundaries with the opposite gender very friendly, respectful, and professional. I do spend my free time, like after work or on the weekends, only with my husband if you're talking about the opposite gender one-on-one. When it comes to anyone at work, right, be it assistants, juniors, interns, anyone, I always make sure to stay respectful, and I always say please, I say thank you. If I'm trying to ask people for help, or if I'm asking people to work on something for me or with me, then I always make sure to say please and thank you to everyone, okay, be it the rank, the role, anything, okay. I think it's just so important that I always stay respectful to others. Another thing is that I personally do not backstab people or snatch from others just to climb the corporate ladder or to get promoted, because I am not that desperate, and I'm also not a snake, so I don't do that to other people at all. I always stay in my lane and just make sure that whatever I do is based on my own ability and is not from doing things that are kind of morally questionable. I personally don't believe in stepping on other people to get ahead, because if I want growth, I'd rather improve on my skills, my own work quality, my communication, and not by sabotaging others. Also, because your reputation travels very far in corporate environments, so people may not say anything to your face, right? But they will remember who can be trusted, who cannot be trusted, and then people will also gossip. I don't want people to be like talking about me like that at work, so I make sure not to do this to others. So to me, integrity is very important. I think it's more important than, just burning bridges. But that's just my personal value system. So if your way is different, that's your choice. But I personally choose to move through my career with a clear conscience. I also try not to be presumptuous or attack people. If anything feels off or what, I always make sure to clarify first, because communication with others is so important. I never assume that, I'm definitely right and then you are definitely wrong, so I'm just gonna attack you. No, I don't do that to other people. I don't think that I am better than others at work. So I always make sure to be in that learning mindset, in that collaboration mindset, ask questions if I'm unsure or if I need to clarify things. Lastly, it is emotional regulation. I think that everyone is allowed to have emotions, but for me, I separate my personal feelings from work and I make sure to stay professional. For example, I don't have outbursts at people at work. I don't shout at people. I don't speak rudely to people. I always make sure to be respectful no matter what, no matter how I'm feeling on the inside. To end off, I truly believe that you can chase your dreams, pursue your career, and excel professionally without losing your morals or your values. So do remember to stay grounded, stay kind, stay humble, stay moral, because your character will follow you much longer than any job title ever will. If I missed anything out, or if you guys have any other tips to also share with others, do feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. And if you have any other topics that you'd like me to talk about or to share, also do let me know in the comment section below. I'll see you in the next video. Bye! I love